And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. And we are so glad to be here. And Dr. Pindu is right with us, and he is taking the mantle to lead us through these uncharted or charted waters. And it's nice to see Dr. Pindu and Makaita. Dr. Pindu, it's Makaita. And this Love the Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. And the program is Today's Africa. Over to you, Dr. Pindu.
Thank you very much, Brother Theo, for the welcome. And of course, we welcome our guest, Tete Makaita. We're so delighted that you have joined us today, all the way from Zimbabwe, the beautiful nation of Zimbabwe. And of course, connected to the beautiful nation of Ghana. We have historic ties that goes way back from way back when. And it's a delight to be together. And we have a lot to cover, and I know that our listeners have been waiting for this. The news has been sent out. We do have a guest, and here we are today. Our topic is quite loaded. And when I think of topics like these, they get me really excited because oftentimes we don't get to talk about things that really matter in life. We talk about other things, or we talk about symptoms and different kinds of things there. I know that Tete Makaita, you have been part of this Love Bay connection, and we are delighted you're back. Some of our listeners might be seeing you for the first time. So I'm going to ask you to just give us a quick synopsis of who you are and some of the things you're passionate about and some of the things you've been doing. We're going to be asking lots of questions. So just give us just a little blurb, just a little something for us to get into this. So over to you, Tete.
Thank you so much, Dr. Francis. I'm very pleased to meet you. We missed you the last time.
I know.
So it's a pleasure to be back on the show. I really love the station. And Dr. JD, how are you? Pleased to meet you again.
I'm fine,
Today.
fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
My name is Makaita Magarezano. I'm a lawyer in Zimbabwe, and I'm most passionate about criminal justice reforming our criminal justice systems, taking a look at the current situation, the deterioration of our prisons, and how much almost every time people who are coming from our jails don't get help when they enter society. They're stigmatized against, they don't get enough resources, they don't almost get to make it when they're on the outside. So I am in the process of establishing a nonprofit organization here in Zimbabwe, which will prioritize ex-prisoners. We are meant to, our programs will be individualized based on the type of assistance each person will be requiring. So it could be accommodation, it could be getting a job, it could be counseling. That's one area of interest I am passionate about. I am also passionate about technology law. It started when I was doing my dissertation, and I chose the topic, the admissibility of electronic evidence in Zimbabwe, and I just fell in love with that. So now we're looking at topics like AI, the visibility of AI. So yes, those are the two passionate things. By Makaita, I am happy to be here on the show talking about leadership, talking about women. It was a pleasure to talk about women leadership. So yes, thank you so much.
We are delighted you're back. And it sounds like this is not the second time you're going to be here. You will be back. And that's not a threat, it's a promise. Now, because I'm just listening to you. Yes, I read a little bit about you the last time I was not able to be here, but when I see people like yourself who are practitioners and women leading key initiatives within Zimbabwe and obviously influencing other neighboring countries and across our continent of Mother Africa, we're delighted to have people like you. And so I really feel that, you know, the things you touched on, we really need to have you come back and talk about some of those at different times so that we can, I mean, I'm fascinated about the fact that you are in, you know, criminal justice and you're a lawyer. And of course, you know that we inherited a system that was dysfunctional. Ian Smith did not do us justice by handing over things that we thought we understood, but we did not understand because we did not have the analytical skills to really understand how the prison should function. And now I think we're in the process of saying, how do we make things work? And so people like yourself, you know, they really excite me. I have friends who are connected to the justice system in terms of correctional initiatives, restorative justice. My fellow brother and mentor, um, Dr. Pashapa, is somebody that I have worked with for many, many years, and I know that he is in the process of trying to develop chaplains who would have not just a religious perspective, but who would have a holistic perspective in terms of using their skills to make things better for our brothers and sisters who end up on the other side of the law. So we're delighted, but today it's all about women, and we're going to focus on that, and we really want to give you time. So you talked about um, women in leadership. Now, I made mention of this fact that we have inherited systems that have not really worked well for us. Right now, I am working in Northern Ontario in Canada with Indigenous peoples, one of the Indigenous peoples of Canada called Moose Cree First Nation. Now, Moose Cree First Nation is a matriarchal system. Women were the leaders and they've always been leaders. Here comes colonizers who come in and disrupt that, because in Europe, as far as we know, it wasn't until 1918 that they even recognized that women would be allowed to vote and women would actually be allowed to pursue opportunities to be in parliament. So we're talking about a system that worked against the matriarchal system. And we know even in most of Africa, we had chiefs, we had district commanders and all those, Masabuko and all that. But the women were in the background and they were the ones who were making sure that things were done. If the chief was not married, there was something wrong with that chief and he would not have credibility. You know, if you were the king and you did not have a queen, something is wrong with the equation, because we knew that this is how things work. In fact, when I got married, I got up and I surprised people. I said that unfortunately, my wife will never be as successful as I am because she doesn't have a wife at home to give her advice. And people laughed, but I was saying the truth. The only person who makes me look good and do what I do is the person in my house who is part of my journey. So anyway, one of these days we're going to talk about marriage as a strategy in Africa. You need to get married to the right person so that you really get to where you want to get to. But for today, um, Tete Makaita, I'm just wondering, what are some of the challenges you see as far as not just personal? So we would like you to bring in a personal perspective in terms of your own challenges. Being a lawyer in Zimbabwe and being female, I like to believe that it has some real challenges. Where sometimes when you show up, people are thinking, oh, okay, it's a her and not a he. Okay, it
Mhm.
changes dynamics. But let us in a little more in terms of personal challenges and the challenges you find women who are in leadership. We're going to talk about the rest of the women. As far as we know, the agricultural sector is really run by women, and they are the ones who provide most of the labor, and they work hard, but oftentimes they don't even get credit for it.
Yeah.
So Tete, this is a loaded subject, and I know that I'm feeling that we don't have enough time for this, but let us in, give us your personal challenges. You know, we don't want you to get too personal and get in trouble, but we want you to highlight for us some of those
Mm.
things that are happening as far as your industry as a lawyer. What are those challenges being female? And at the same time, what are some of those systemic issues out there from a larger perspective as far as women in leadership is concerned? And then after that, I will bring in our brother JD all the way from Accra. So again, our listeners, we welcome you. This is Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, coming all the way from the studios in Toronto, but connected to the studios in Accra. And of course, it's a global village, so we have listeners from all over the world, really, who are following this. And so, Tete, you are on. And by the way, Tete in Zimbabwe, it's an affectionate term that simply means an aunt. Everybody is your sister. So,
Yes, yes. Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Francis, for that question. Indeed, you are right. The legal profession is one prestigious, one noble profession, and most people are used to seeing male lawyers and rarely female lawyers. It is that time, that era we are in now, when a lot of female lawyers are beginning to pop up. Back in the days, if a female lawyer would pop up, you'd know that she's from a rich family, she's got, very big connections. But now it's just almost about everybody, people from all different types of, backgrounds, families, we are getting that qualification. So one of the biggest challenges that women are facing now is to suppress that idea that the legal profession is, a male-dominated industry. Only males would be able to argue a case. Only it's just like, when it comes to those physical jobs, they say only males can, operate a crane. It's really the same with the in the legal profession. So as women, we are forced to work extremely hard to be able to prove ourselves in the profession. It's like sometimes when you enter court and you are, with a male opponent, and he'll be like, oh, okay, well, I remember the case I had with one very big human rights lawyer here in Zimbabwe. It was a case. He was representing a journalist, and I was a prosecutor then. I was also very afraid, I was like, wow, I'm meeting this huge male journalist that's been in practice, for so long. And I think you could sense it, that this girl is afraid, So, those would be personal challenges. I know some of the women will be, so strong and they'll be able to succumb, to overcome those things. So women are undervalued in law, and the gender bias. And then we also have a challenge, as women here, to be able to balance work and family. There are a lot of reports right now of women, as I started, I said this is a very noble, prestigious profession, but our salaries here in Zimbabwe are not able to actually prove and cement that notion. Lawyers are actually one of the underpaid professionals here in Zimbabwe, especially prosecutors. Prosecutors are working away with less than 200 US dollars, and that salary is not enough. So for women, and we know there are other female single mothers, even if you are in a complete setup, you have to now go to work as a lawyer, but you still have to do other jobs in order for you to sustain. And that is a number one challenge for women, not only in the legal profession but for all professions. You find nurses hustling. It's that there's that term now, it's very popular, hustling. You can't just go to the office. And you find when I was at work, we had this at the desk, you see products, you've got your files here and everything, but then you have your products here. You'll be selling biscuits or muffins or perfumes. So really you are trying, to balance work and family in order for you to get money. And then the other aspect is sexual harassment. You know, uh, it seems cliche, but such things are happening. And in order, we did speak of women being undermined, being undervalued, and for you to be able to, get to the next stage or to get a promotion, some women are really being forced to perform acts, or they're actually abused. And because of the hunger and less salaries that I've talked about, a lot of women are just actually letting their morals go. So that it might be peculiar to Zimbabwe. I don't know other countries, because it boils down to our economy. It boils down to our political setup. I do believe if we had everything proper, we had everything right, we'll be much better off, because you look at our neighboring countries, South Africa, prosecutors are the highly paid professionals. It's actually admirable to be a professional prosecutor in South Africa, whereas here in Zimbabwe, it's almost like a curse, you see. So yeah, that is some of the very few points that make women lawyers have it tough here in Zimbabwe. Yeah, back to you, Dr. Francis.
Wow, you know what? Thank you so much for highlighting some of those personal and systemic challenges that people face being women and being a leader. And I mean, you have highlighted some key points here that I find that, I mean, these are not textbook responses. You're talking about reality. When I hear about, you saying that women are undervalued, and I think we as men know that, and you're undermined, and there's gender bias, and then balancing work and family, and no equity as far as salaries are concerned. You're underpaid, and then you talked about that whole notion of additional streams of income. And here you are as a lawyer, a highly esteemed profession, but you have to be selling extra little things on your desk so that you can survive. I mean,
Yeah.
that to me gives a far much bigger picture with regards to how most of our African countries are functioning. And so,
Yes.
again, it goes back to dysfunction that we have inherited. But listen, we cannot continue to cry foul and blame the colonizers 30, 40, 60 years later. We need to do something about ourselves. I see that one of our esteemed panelists, Miss Chirinda, has just joined us, and welcome, Miss Chirinda. And I really hope that we will give you space as well to be able to share. I mean, you've worked with women in different parts of Africa, and you're passionate about that as well. Earlier on, I told you that uh, you know, when I got married, I told people that unfortunately my wife is not going to be as successful as I am because she does not have a wife at home to give her advice. I really believe that with all my heart. So when I think of this whole notion of women in leadership, women as far as, you know, driving the force towards our development in Africa, and yet our sister Makaita, you're saying they're undervalued. There's gender bias. They are undermined. They're trying to balance work and family. They're extremely qualified. I mean, being a lawyer is not an easy thing. You go to school, and I mean, I'm not a lawyer myself, but the practices and the things you have to do to get there is not easy.
Yeah.
And then you talked about sexual harassment, you know, things that we I mean, I know I said that we cannot continue to blame the West, but the West has contributed a lot to this. We are in Canada. We have some people in the US. We have some people in the UK. We know that their own cultures have mistreated women for years. Here in Canada, Aboriginal or indigenous women, native women, they were stripped of their status once they get married to somebody from Europe, and they are now changing that. So, Brother JD, I know you've been listening. Would you please give us a perspective from where you are? We know that in Ghana, it's a totally different thing all over there. Women do not suffer sexual harassment. They don't have to struggle balancing work and family. There are no gender biases in Accra in particular. And women they are overvalued. They are not undermined in Ghana. Is that true, my brother? Give us a synopsis of what's happening from Ghana.
Yeah, good afternoon from Ghana. Doc, the women issues are the same all over the place because you just rightly said, even in Europe, for a long time, women were being discriminated against. But of course, after the Beijing conference, where women mainstreaming issues have come at the forefront. And yeah, Ghana has done a lot for women, but of course, there are so many things that is left to be done. Even last week, women of Ghana were demonstrating to the Parliament House over the taxes they are put on sanitary pad for women. The taxes were so huge. You know, Ghana has got economic difficulties, and we need to mobilize resources from all other places. And they put a lot of taxes on the sanitary pass for women. Only this week, the women demonstrated, went to Parliament and sent a petition there. So the women issues are everywhere. But I should also say that after Beijing conference, you know, when we were doing the political, when Rawlings was the head, the wife was very articulate for women issues. And he pushed so much. There were laws passed about interstate succession law, either to women whose husband died, are discriminated against, they were moved from their homes and what have you. But in Ghana, no, the law has been passed that the woman who loses the husband and the children will not suffer because the husband is dead, because the different women support their husband while in active work. So you get a situation that when the man dies, then the family people will come and sack the woman from their abode. There's a law in Ghana to that effect. Ghana has been able to have one female Speaker of Parliament. We have been able to have President 3. There were 2 already, but about 2 weeks ago, the new Lord Chief Justice is a woman. So we are moving. But we still have cases of female genital mutilation in the north, in some districts that we are fighting. We still have women being discriminated against, because you notice that the few women who were able to sustain themselves in school turned out to be the most brilliant people. turned out to be the most qualified with the best grades. So I don't know why at the point women issues were put at the back burner, because we cannot move Africa forward without mainstreaming women issues. And you know, as you rightly said, Makata and you rightly said, women are the, for me, if you look at the COVID situation, most of the nurses who faced, because in a hospital situation, you have 1 or 2 doctors or 3 doctors, there are a lot of nurses there, and most of them are female. When you go to our farms, the cocoa farms, you notice that is the woman who is there doing the breaking of pod and what have you. But at a point in our history, we have very brilliant, solid women who led our tribes and ethnic groups at war. In Ghana, we have Yas Antoa. In Benin, we had a woman king or queen who led the country for so many years and did marvelous things, conquered, faced the whites, the colonizers, and defeated them. The history is there. So I don't know why through our time women have been discriminated against. But I'm happy to say that now things are changing, and I hope other African countries will also put women's issues at the back front burner and make sure that we make laws that will bring up women. Because for a woman, immediately you train one woman, you have trained the whole nation. Doctor, when you go forward, I will ask our ladies questions, but I will keep my questions now and give my sweet sister, who has just come on, the chance to also bring some of the issues. So, Doctor, I'm done now.
You are a very wise man, sir. Thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. We need to listen to them. One of the things that we try to do here, especially at Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio Show, is to create a safe environment where people can share their views. And we're glad that in this particular case, today, as we talk about women as the driving force towards Africa's development, we actually have these 2 special women as part of our team here. So, Miss Cynthia, will give you an opportunity here to share your views, your perspectives, respond to some of the comments made. Over to you, Madam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Francis. I just want to start by saluting my amazing sister here. One of the things that I do know about the space that she operates in, my dear sister Makaita Chikamima Garezano, that's not an easy space. That's a very delicate space, and it also threatens a lot of one's psychological comfort, physical and emotional. So you are a hero, and we definitely salute you, because being a human rights lawyer and advocating for the kind of things that you do, you really are breaking a lot of barriers, and you are inspiring so many other women to actually realize that it can be done. So allow me, on behalf of not only the panelists here, but all the women, to just salute you and say, you know what, just keep up the excellent work that you're doing. I really like the fact that you are doing a lot in terms of reforming correctional institutions in Africa. Those are areas that many people are afraid to trade in and bring transformation. But the fact that you're leading the way, we definitely are grateful. And thank you to our producers and my fellow panelists and our hosts. Thanks for having me. Indeed, when we look at Africa's fragile context, and we look at the burden of conflict, poverty, climate change, all of those things, you realize that burden falls most heavily on the origin marginalized groups, and women fall into that group. So if we do not significantly and collectively step up our efforts, we will find that the continent's share of the world's poor will rise to, I think there was a report recently that was saying that that would rise up to about over 90% by 2030. and that 8 of the world's 10 poorest countries will be in Africa. And, such statistics are really quite scary. And I think especially when we consider, Dr. Francis, that women represent more than half of Africa's combined population, yet sadly, they only generate a third of the continent's collective GDP. I mean, that's really sad. This actually reinforces and fuels that urge for us to involve more women to contribute to the continent's long-term economic growth, even as we've just heard from our fellow panelists here. It's not just a situation obtaining in Ghana, it's really prevalent across Africa. Women need to be provided with more access to education, access to financial services, new digital technologies. I mean, when we look at our fellow rural women folk, and I do quite a lot of comprehensive work with women in the grassroots, the times that I am in Zimbabwe and other African countries. And just that disparity alone, which is there, is really sad to see that someone who's in an urban setting within Africa has access to 10 times more than what someone else has. And even just in terms of the knowledge gaps, it's really quite tragic. So if we're able to invest more in them, we'll definitely unlock many growth and development opportunities for Africa. And this is not to say that there hasn't been progress. I mean, there has been a lot of progress. I remember, I think there was some report about South Africa now having quite a fairly good percentage of women being represented in positions of decision making within the political space. So there has been some pockets of progress. Yet, of course, that gender gap between men and women in Africa, it really remains in certain areas. And when you look at how I was reading recently a report from McKinsey, where they had a study that they called "The Power of Parity: Advancing Women's Equality in Africa," and they were actually saying that a large majority of women work in informal sectors. I think they quoted 89%, and that was according to UN Women. And they were saying they're working in these informal sectors. We call it the side hustle, right? And they still need to break through leadership and decision-making positions in politics, in business, on the international agenda. So we need to shift a lot of pieces on this chessboard in Africa and begin to actually say, how do we begin to recognize the women as the movers and shakers? And also that starts with the women being able to value themselves and value what they are bringing to the table, and them being able to also get a voice. I mean, I can really go on the whole day and just talk about so many things, Dr. Francis. But for now, I'll stop here and just say that indeed it is true that we still have that gender parity, and there's a lot that can be done to actually close those gaps.
Wow, that is a lot. And I know you could talk all day because you work with women and you've worked with women and you continue to do that even right now, where you are actively involved in women. You said something very, something that caught my attention in the midst of all the other things that you said. You talked about significantly and collectively collaborate and put our minds and hands and everything together. You didn't, not exactly in those words, but you're talking about significantly and collectively doing this. Now, these are the challenges we have. We have a systemic issue that is prevalent in South Africa. Yes, they are making developments in South Africa, in Namibia, in Mozambique, and Botswana, and Angola, and Zimbabwe, and Zambia, and Malawi, and DRC, and Tanzania, and then over to Ghana and Senegal, and all this. We're talking about systemic issues here. Now, how do we bring change at a level that really allows us to see the the gender biases and the disparities you're talking about adjust? You know, how do we bring in that paradigm shift? It's not going to happen overnight, but what are some of those significant things that we could really look into and say, what can the women do because they're doing something? They're doing stuff. What can men do to support that? So, in a minute or so, I will come back to both of you and have you lead us a little more in terms of some of those practical aspects. But at this point, I'm going to hand it over to our brother right in the background there, Brother Theo. And again, this is Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio Show, coming all the way from the studios in Toronto, but connected to the studios in Ghana and around the world. So, welcome our listeners. And we're talking about women as the driving force towards Africa's development. Brother Theo.
Thank you, Dr. Francis. It's a pleasure to have my sisters here talking about this. This is an issue that was a topic that most times a lot of people are not so comfortable bringing it up for discussion, especially among men. The leadership among women in Africa is not a new phenomenon. Just like JB said, they've led us in battles. If you go to Africa, any African country, go to the marketplace, see how many men you see. So without the women as a driving force within the context of the development of Africa, Africa will be nowhere. But let me share with you something that I came across from the Brookings Institute. Despite the fact that, things are not moving the way that it's supposed to be, I looked at some statistics. It's says women in Africa are increasingly represented on corporate boards. Well, the stats that I see says women's representation on boards, 24.3% African company boards are held by women, 24.3. 24.5% African company board chairs are held by women. 27.0% of corporate board members worldwide are women. Now let's look at top industries with the highest percentage. It is 25.2% women. Energy and resources, women. 24.5% financial services, and 24.3% consumer business. We're making headway, but it's not fast enough. Women are underrepresented, and there's got to be changes, whether through more representation in our governance structures in Africa. Because if we don't push that agenda, it's going to be the same thing 50 years from now. So I think I can see the movement, just like what JB was saying, women, this is a non-starter. Men don't go through menstrual cycles and stuff like that. So if they come out and give you a price list where it comes to say the parts that JB was saying, and they put taxes on them, I don't see how that should happen. And I don't think, if women were in parliament in Ghana to sort of vote against it, how many women are in parliament to say, no, you cannot do that? That, well, with a governance structure in Africa, everything goes. So to cut it short, I think we have to find ways and means to encourage women towards the development of Africa, because without the participation of women in all sectors of our governance structure and everything, socioeconomic sectors, we have a problem. Like somebody would say, Houston, we have a problem. Dr. Francis.
Thank you so much, Brother Theo, for those insightful comments. I think you are pretty much along this whole understanding that, the women are key players in transmitting and implementation of cultural values, the principles, the belief systems from when the children are born. You know, I just finished teaching a course on codependency, which is a real issue for people who did not connect and develop those skills when they were younger from their mothers. And unfortunately, we have a culture that's trying to disrupt all that from our women and take that away from them. And that's not going to work. So, ladies, back to you. I don't know who wants to go first, but I'm going to leave this open. And whoever wants to say something, jump right in. And after that, the next one between the two of you will jump right after that. So, go for it, ladies.
All right, I think I'll jump in first. First of all, I would like to thank you, Cynthia, for the acknowledgement. You know, it's not an easy territory, the one I'm in. You know, you basically are dealing with a lot of demons, and you know, it really needs a strong person. So yeah. Dr. Francis, you earlier on mentioned that it is, you know, colonialism, the white man who is to blame for coming in to our African continent and, you know, disrupting things and then leaving us without the proper manual. I agree. And it's quite astonishing that after I've embarked on this mission, no, that's what I'm realizing, that even the whole criminal justice system, I think I talked about it during the last show, but, you know, Africans had their own way. And our African culture, we respected women, you know, the type of and the number of offenses that are there today against women were not really there back in the day. You know, we had taboo. You know, what you call them, like, you know, taboos. When you do something against a woman, the elders will tell you, you know, this will happen to you, you know, or that will happen to you. Like in our language, you know, we have kutanda boso, you know, if you disrespect your mom. But today, there isn't that type of respect towards women, you know, even mothers. I'm working with children who are so disrespectful towards their mothers. And I'm going to be the elephant in the room. You know, on top of colonialism, I'm going to attribute this whole deterioration of, you know, the lack of respect against for women to something that people don't want to talk about, and that is, you know, the war against patriarchy. I do believe, you know, we have the feminist campaign, the whole thing going on. I'm a woman. I have 3 daughters, and my mother has 4 daughters. I'm the first of. There's no way in the world where I would be against women. But I have a dad, I have a husband, I have cousins, I have brothers. And I want to see us all moving in life and making it in life, you see. But the one thing, you know, I remember reading on LinkedIn, I think it was a UN post, they actually almost admitted that, you know, the war against, what you call it, feminism campaign is not taking the road which they actually thought it would take. So now, where we are, instead of making things get better, we're actually creating gender wars. So the moment you are saying men, women, and forgetting the men are now getting defensive, and they're holding their positions so tightly and so, you know, boldly, and, you know, they're not relinquishing their masculinity to women, because to them it's now a war against men. Women want to take over the leadership roles. Women want to take over, the nice job post. Women, in households, it will be like, you want to be the husband, so you want to be the husband now. So I really feel like the way the feminism campaign is going on is actually not the proper way. It is in a way demasculine, I don't know that word. The English bundles gone. It's now there's that war against the men. So I feel like we have to restructure. We have to, it'll benefit both genders. You see, it'll benefit both the men and the women if we restructure this whole gender balance thing. I don't really, myself being a lawyer and growing up, would have the debates, and I would tell people that I don't believe in gender balance. There is nothing that is called a gender balance, because I do, in a way, I believe that, the types of things that my husband can do that I can't do, and we look at, that's why God made us differently. Even if you look at biology, you can't suppress that. You really can't suppress that. And I think that's the whole confusion with the whole rainbow people. It's mixing things. So I think we have to go back to the drawing board, and that would really help women advance further. I don't know if I'm making sense. I don't know if I have made sense. So the threat to women, what's making life difficult for women in leadership roles is no longer what we think, is going on. It's rather, the misconception and the misconception of the whole feminism thing. So yeah, I that is my take. I love both genders. I love men, I love women, but I think in a certain way we have to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And one of the things that I always say is if you need to understand the purpose of anything, you need to go to the one who created it and begin to ask what was their agenda, what was their vision. So to a very large extent, I agree with you there, Advocate. I think when it comes to just understanding the role of humanity which encompasses the men, the women, the children, the entire holistic society, it is important to realize that what we are trying to do is to make sure that everyone is on one page and everyone is playing their functional role in the way that they were created to do that. And we need each other to complement each other so that we create more holistic solutions for society, really. And to answer Dr. Francis' question in terms of what needs to be done, I believe that most of the challenges in terms of our approach to solving problems, the main challenge is that things have been done on the surface. And what I mean by that is because there has been a lot of shifts which have segregated women from participating meaningfully for a very long time, we now need real structural and systems change taking place, because if we have solutions that are well-intentioned, yet they are focused on surface level changes, whilst the real architecture of inequalities and the patriarchal neoliberalism remain intact, we will still have the roots in place. So at some point they will still bud. So it's not just about nipping problems at surface levels. We cannot be treating the symptoms. We need to go back into the roots. And most of that has to do with having proper policy action being taken. What are our policy makers not just saying and writing on paper, but what are they actually implementing and doing? There have been lots of great dialogues and conversations taking place. We have focus groups, we have parliamentary outreaches, and people are going out. Okay, what are the women saying? And then there are contributions. But then ultimately, we want to see those contributions uh, actually resulting in a proper systemic change and structural change, not just being noted down. So, really, when we're talking about systems level transformation, it goes far deeper than the quotas that, we're talking about. Oh, women have got a quota, they can be represented. It goes beyond the percentages and targets, you know. It's actually found in the less easily quantifiable struggles for increased agency. We need increased agency, like what the work of my sister right there is profiling. Just that agency is very important, and it has its hazards. That's the sad thing, because once you are seen as a voice that's trying to come up and increase social agency transformation, you tend to attract a particular light to yourself, and once you're in that light, sometimes you're attacked. So we want to be looking at increasing the voice, increasing the power throughout the private and political realms. So I would say it's not just dealing with the systemic, with the surface things, but really beginning to say, how do we look at systems change and structural changes so much such that the narrative also shifts? And whilst we're doing that, how do we continue to respect how humanity was designed and created to operate? Because sometimes we become extremists. Um, and having given birth myself physically to biologically to sons and daughters, um, I do know that as a mother, I want both both of them, both my sons and my daughters, all of them, the many that God has given me and given me capacity to be able to reproduce. I want them to be able to access opportunities and to be able to exercise their capacity to their best. So it would be sad for me to then create a cycle where I'm saying, okay, I'm going to invest more in the girl child than I invest in my sons. I think that in itself has got systemic issues and challenges. So those are some of my thoughts on what you have just asked us to reflect on, Dr. Francis.
You know what? It's really amazing to see how the two of you have been comparing notes. And I don't know who has been stealing from who, but this whole, I think our advocate sister there, Magarizano, talked about the restructuring, and you're talking about systems change and policy making, and not just the cosmetic changes on the surface, but you're talking about going to the roots and implementing change. And I'm like, this is wonderful to see the two of you on the same page here and agreeing on this. And I think our sister earlier made mention to, the gender wars have drifted us away. And then you talked about, feminism has its place, and I think it happened at a time that a lot of our sisters, women, and mothers were being pushed down by the patriarchal Western imposed culture. But I think you're saying it has drifted us away, so far away now that we have to say, wait, 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 wait. Like you're saying, this is not what we wanted. We're not saying let's discard the other group, but we're saying we need to come together, which then brings me to the point that Ms. Chirinda pointed out earlier about systemic not systemic, but systematically synthesizing and collaborating and working together as a team. And so we need to have part B of this um, talk show for sure. But I want to give an opportunity to Brother JD and our brother Theo, just in terms of what could you contribute? What can you contribute to? What can be done to move us beyond where we are? I'll start with you, Brother JD.
Thank you very much, Doc. As we were making your last point about the Western influence on the way Africa does things, it just occurred to me that I think religion has also played a part in this. Because if you come to think of the fact that when we look at African histories, women were at the forefront of our ethnic groups or tribes in war and everything. And when you come home to our villages, the women are in the farms contributing. And as Brother Tio said, the women are in the markets selling and bringing food home for the family to eat. So what's changed? Then I think if law is based on religion, the Christian religion, then I believe the way Christianity and the Muslim religions had a divide for women and men. Now, if you're a woman, you cannot be a pastor. If you're a woman in the Muslim religion, if you're a woman, you have got a special place that you have to sit and that kind of stuff. And that transformation, bringing Western civilization and Arab civilization to Africa with its religions, has also had an influence on the way we do things. But that's not the way Africa look. Africa look at women as human beings who can equally contribute to development. So if for some time other influences have made us the way we are now, then we have to get ourselves out of it so that we put our men and women apart, because everything that man can do, women can do too. And on your question, I believe that now that everybody is going to school, we should strengthen the girl child education. Because if you educate a woman, then you are giving her all the tools that she will need for future life and, of course, future contribution of the development of the environment or the country that he or she is. So we should look at a way of encouraging girl child education. And when they go to school, like the example I gave in Ghana, we don't bring impediments in their way by hiking the cost of sanitary pass, so that these innocent girls, during their periods, will absent themselves from school. But when you absent yourself from school, definitely you miss those things that the teacher has been teaching your fellow classmates. So we should look at the small things that we can do to bring equality among men and women for our own good. But otherwise, the system whereby the statistics that Theo churned out show that women have been far below the men in gainful things, we should look at it again and push our women up. So I believe that, like Kwame Nkrumah did in the 60s, when the first election, almost everybody in the assembly was a man. So he took affirmative action by bringing 10 women from the 10 regions of Ghana into parliament, so that the women will have a voice. Because definitely, if you go for elections and everybody is a man, who will speak for the women? So we should deliberately bring up policies that to bring women issues on the front burner, so that we can empower our women. Because when we empower our women, the world will be a good place to live in. Look, I'm done for now.
Thank you very much, Brother JD. Closing remarks, Brother Theo.
I will just say that I read somewhere, and I will say it is not enough to recognize that African women and girls deserve rights by adopting new laws and frameworks. Countries must ensure that these rights are a lived reality.
Mm.
That's it.
Wow, that is powerful. I think this is the shortest closing remark I've ever heard from Brother Theo. Thank you so much, Brother Theo. Our two sisters, I'm going to give each one of you in a sentence or two closing remarks. I know you talked about going deep and changing things from the very, very foundation, but saying, hey, this is a new day. Over to you, sisters, in no particular order. Don't all speak at once.
She's on mute. She's
You're
on
in mute.
All right, go for it.
mute.
Okay,
Okay.
Yes,
I was
Miss Cynthia.
I was advocating for you to go first. I think in conclusion, I just wanted to say indeed women are backbones of African economies and they can be key drivers of transformation. And what we want to do is to build more resilient societies. So let's continue to empower and provide adequate support to our women because they really have the grace, and I call it a grace, to rebuild communities and families. And they are definitely a very key element in terms of societal transformation. So those are my closing remarks, Dr. Francis.
Thank you. Over to you,
Yes.
Advocate Margarezano.
Yes, indeed. My closing remark will be: let us respect women, accept women in leadership roles, and for the men, let us inspire positive masculinity in each other so that, we don't um, do anything that will make women go back to where we don't want them to go back, like back prehistoric where, women were not respected. We want to move forward. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's hard to have to bring this to a close for today, but like we said, there will be a second part, a third part, if not even more, because this is a very, very important topic as we look at women as the driving force towards Africa's development. We cannot be what we want to be in Africa if we intentionally exclude women from what is happening. They are already actively involved, they are in the forefront already. So, what we're saying is let's be intentional about the implementation, about making policies, making sure that we create space and policies that really show that we have respect for the women who are part of this ecosystem, God's economy that has been entrusted to us. And again, our listeners, thank you again for listening from around the world. This is a Love Bay Afrobeat music talk show coming all the way from Toronto. And like we said, there will be a follow up to this. So stay tuned. Again, thank you very much for being with us today. We look forward to being with you again soon next week. So, again, our panelists, um, Miss Chirinda, thank you for being with us. Our brother, JD, all the way from Accra, and our advocate, Chikami Magarizano, all the way from Zimbabwe, and of course, our host, who is always working faithfully and incessantly from behind the scenes, our brother Theo. Thank you very much again. So we'll see you soon. Have a great day.